This is Lanita, the Scrappy Grandma, and this is our fourth. This is the Torah Portions Bible Study playlist, and this is our fourth week. It's been exciting, actually, starting the portions with other believers, with other ladies. It's just been awesome. Last year, I started by myself, and this year it's awesome. In our group, we're able to have discussions about, what the Father's showing us through all of this. And it's so much fun. So this week, like I said, is week 4. Vayera, not sure how it's pronounced, but Vayera, and it means he appeared. And it is Genesis 18:1 through 22:24, 2 Kings 4:1 through 37. And I did not go through and bookmark them. Darn it. So I've got this one done through, I apologize, 22:24. Wow. I thought I was all ready. That's having Rusty home. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, great. Goes all the way through the end of that one. Having Rusty home has kind of thrown me off this morning because he's home for Veterans Day and a 2 Kings. So there's 1 Kings, 2 Kings 4, 1 through 37, 1 through 37. 37, right there. Okay, so I'm going to put a little mark there. And then Luke 2, 1 through 38. Luke 2, 1 through 38. Through there. Okay. And then let's just go ahead. Sorry, I'm taking up your time to do this. You know what? As I'm able, I'll jump through because I at least know I want to get those read. But so it's Luke 2, 1 through 38. Then we've got Romans 9, 6 through 9, just in case we don't have time to read all of these. Galatians 4, 21 through 31. Hebrews 6, 13 through 20. And James 7, 14 through 24. I think that's a 7. It might be, it might be a 2. Well, let's see. All right, so let's get started with a little bit of commentary to kind of set the stage of what we're going to be reading, kind of put us in a Hebrew mindset of, who this portion was, written for. And okay, Vayera, Vayera. And in last week's Parsha, Lech Lecha recounted how Abraham left everything behind in response to the promise of divine inheritance given by Yahuwah. Because of his obedience, Yahuwah told Abram that he would become the father of a multitude of people as numerous as the stars in the heaven. Yahuwah then renamed him Abraham and made a covenant to give him the land of Canaan as an everlasting possession. Yahuwah further commanded Abraham and his descendants to be circumcised as a sign of a covenant. And so this week Parsha begins, and Yahuwah appeared, and we'll see what it says in mine. It says here, and the Lord appeared, and Yahuwah appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. For some reason, this is one of my favorite passages. I think it's exciting. He's just kind of hanging out, and Yahuwah comes to him. So according to the Jewish sages, so I always say grain of salt because this is man's ideas of what they think may have happened or how it may have gone. It was just 3 days after performing his circumcision, the time of the most intense pain as a result of the procedure, that Yahuwah appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre. Nonetheless, despite his discomfort in a display of hospitality, he rushed off to prepare a meal for the 3 mysterious guests who appeared in the desert heat. While the 3 men were eating, one of them announced that in exactly 1 year, he would return to them, and Sarah would then give birth to a son. Sarah, who had been listening from the tent door, heard this and laughed within herself at the suggestion. I find it really interesting because when Yahuwah told Abram that he was going to have a son, he also laughed, and then he actually named him Laughter. I think that's really interesting. I'm sure there's a lot more depth of meaning in all of that. So anyway, she laughed within herself at the suggestion. To this, Yahuwah, disguised as one of the 3 guests, replied, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old? Is anything too wonderful for Adonai? At the appointed time, I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah will have a son." The 3 guests then set out from there to Sodom, and Abraham accompanied them to see them off. Then Yahuwah said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do, seeing that he shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him?" Yahuwah then explained that he was going to see if the outcry against the wicked cities of Sodom and Gomorrah was true, and if so, was going to pronounce judgment upon them. So isn't that interesting? How do we provoke Yahuwah to act? There was an outcry against the wicked in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. So, we all have our wicked cities in our states, California. Yeah. Actually, you know what? California's got some amazing places and then some very wicked places. So, and realize, when he hears the outcry, but then he comes and destroys everything. So, or destroys those cities. So Abraham then questioned Yahuwah, "Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked?" he asked. He knows his nephews down there and his family. "Shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just?" In a profound sequence of hypothetical questions and answers, Abraham asked Yahuwah whether he would destroy the entire city if 50 righteous people dwelt there. "No," answered Yahuwah, "not even if 50 are in the city." "Well, then how about 45? "No," again answered Yahuwah. Abraham began showing some chutzpah. What about 40, 30, 20, 10? Yahuwah then stated that even if 10 righteous men were found there, he would spare the city from his wrath, and then went his way. When 2 of the 3 disguised angels arrived at Sodom, Abraham's nephew, Lot, extended his hospitality and sought to protect them from the evils of the nightlife. Most people, Sodom, it's because of, homosexuality. But from what I'm understanding is Sodom was known for just being purely wicked, where, and the mistreatment of having no compassion or empathy or caring for other human beings. They were, just completely into gratifying their own desires. And the Father held them accountable for just how wickedly they treated people that came into the city. And I guess it was their practice actually to, rape and pillage any, people that come into their city. No wonder people were crying out. So when 2 of the 3 disguised as angels arrived at Sodom, Abram's Lot nephew extended his hospitality and sought to protect them from the evils of nightlife in the wicked city. He took the angels into his home and prepared a meal for them, but soon a mob surrounded his house and demanded that he release the 2 strangers for them to sexually abuse. Lot tried to reason with them and even offered his 2 virgin daughters, in their place, but the mob grew ugly and finally rushed him. The 2 angels intervened, however, by pulling him inside of the house and striking the mob with blindness. They then revealed that they were sent by Yahuwah to destroy the city and urged Lot to warn his immediate family of imminent doom. Lot tried to warn his daughter's fiancés, but they thought he was joking, and sadly, no one else listened to Lot's warnings either. As the morning dawned, the angels urged Lot to flee the city with his wife and his 2 daughters, but he lingered. Finally, they mercifully took his family and led them outside. It's interesting. So he lingered. He didn't want to move. He didn't want to leave the familiar. Lot was given permission to flee to the small city of Zoar, and just as he entered, Yahuwah began raining sulfurous fire down upon the evil cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Tragically, Lot's wife looked back and was turned into a pillar of salt. Lot then decided to flee to the hills with his daughters. While taking shelter in a cave, his 2 daughters, believing that they and their father were the only ones left alive on the world, so interesting. I wonder if they were like, oh my gosh, it's just like in the days of Noah, we're going to have to start over. And the only man here is our dad. They got their father drunk and had sexual relations with him and became pregnant. The 2 sons born from the incident would become the fathers of the nations Moab and Ammon. So from here forward, when we hear about the Moabites, which was it Ruth was a Moabite, the Moabites, here it's going to say the Moabites and the Ammonites. When we hear about those moving forward in our Bible studies, it will, we'll understand that these were descendants of Lot and his daughter, which then tie into Yeshua, Jesus, because Ruth is a Moabite. And so Lot's DNA came into the family line of Yeshua. So, and they became the 2 sons. Okay. Respectively, King David's great-grandmother Ruth was a descendant of Moab. So after this, Abraham moved south to Gerar. Apparently, Abraham had an ongoing agreement with Sarah to pretend to be brother and sister during their travels in order to avoid clan violence among settling in a godless area. Interesting. I always had, it's like, why was he able to lie, Abraham able to lie and say it's his sister, and then he would be blessed because he would leave these places with, wealth, mass wealth. And, in studying it out and in our Torah Portion call last week about, with Pharaoh and that, it's one, she was his sister. She was his niece, but in that culture in that day, they would call their niece, kind of like in Hawaii, or I think also in our indigenous, they call family members. I know, like in Hawaii, all the older women are aunties and the younger are sister and brother, sister and brother in Hawaii. So she was technically in his family line, and his sister, his niece, and father's ways are just different than ours. Interesting. Make sure that's working. Okay. So, there we go. Sure enough, the Philistines' king Abimelech took Sarah to be part of his harem, but in a dream, Yahuwah warned him that he was a dead man and failed to return her back to Abram, her husband. Abimelech did so and castigated Abraham for his duplicity. Whoa. However, Abraham was then given a choice of the land in the area. See, he's being blessed. Yahuwah then visited Sarah as he had said. She miraculously conceived a son who Abram called Isaac. Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah was 90 when Isaac was born. Abraham circumcised Isaac on the 8th day according to the Torah of circumcision. Now, when Isaac was weaned, Abraham threw a party, but Sarah noticed Hagar's son, Ishmael, mocking. And we have to understand that Ishmael is 13, 14 years old. He might be 15 at this time because weaning, 2 years, I think, to wean. So Ishmael's a teenager at this point. I always pictured him in my head when I would read this as, a toddler, but he's not. He's a teenager at this point. So now Hagar's Ishmael was mocking Isaac. So she said to Abraham, cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of the slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. At first, Abraham was displeased, but Yahuwah told him to do as Sarah had asked, because it was through Isaac that his offspring would be named, and Yahuwah would bless Ishmael to make him a patriarch of a great nation. So Abraham sent Hagar and his son Ishmael away to wander in the desert, and when the water Abraham gave to them ran out, Hagar covered her son in the brush, and then went off to wail for his death. But Yahuwah heard the voice of their crying, and an angel of Yahuwah showed her a water supply to save the boy's life. And Yahuwah was with the boy, and he grew up, and he lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. Abraham then dwelt many days among the Philistines, and Abimelech soon made a treaty with him. Abraham gave Abimelech 7 sheep as a sign of their truce, and named the place Beersheba, the well of oath. The well of oath. Then came Abraham's greatest test of all, the binding. In this story, this is the story how Abraham was tested by Yahuwah to bind his beloved son Isaac and offer him as a sacrifice on Mount Moriah, the place of the future temple. At the last moment, Yahuwah stopped Abraham from going through with the sacrifice and provided a substitute. So much in depth there with the substitute, Yeshua. Abraham then named the site Adonai Yiri. The Adonai who sees, a play on the word Moriah that means seen or chosen by Yahuwah. As Messianic believers, they understand that Echada, the binding, as a foreshadowing of the ultimate sacrifice that the Heavenly Father would give on our behalf. Unlike Abraham, Yahuwah, the Father, actually offered his only son upon Moriah in order to make salvation upon all who believe. As Abraham said, Yahuwah will provide a lamb for himself. Consider how the binding provides a prophetic picture of the Mashiach, Yeshua, Jesus the Messiah, as the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. Both Isaac and Yeshua were born miraculously. Both were only begotten sons. Both were to be sacrificed by their fathers on Mount Moriah. Both were to be resurrected on the third day. Genesis 22:5 and Hebrew 11:17-19. Both unwillingly took up the means. I'm sorry here. I kind of got lost. Both were to be resurrected on the third day. Both willingly took up the means of his execution, and both demonstrate that one's life can be sanctified for another. The ram for Isaac, Yeshua for all mankind. Indeed, Isaac is a clear picture of the greater seed of Abraham to come, the one who would remove the curse and save us from death. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Yeshua. On account of Abraham's obedience, trust, the angel of Yahuwah then said, by myself I have sworn, declares Yahuwah, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of the heaven and as the sand of the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gates of his enemies. In your seed shall all the nations of this earth be blessed, because of you have obeyed my voice. So all of us are blessed because of him. So the parsha then concludes with Abraham settling in Beersheba and receiving news of the birth of a daughter, Rebecca, to his nephew, Bethuel. So let's get started. That was kind of lengthy. So 18:1. Let's begin. Fight, Father Yah. Father, I commit this time to you. I thank you for whoever watches this, and I ask that your words only come through. Help me guard my tongue and help everything that comes out of my mouth through this study be edifying and glorifying to you. Thank you for this opportunity and for entrusting me with your word. In Yeshua's holy name. Amen. All right. So, and Yahuwah appeared to him by the terebinth trees of Mamre, while he was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. So he lifted up his eyes and he looked, and he saw 3 men standing opposite of him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent to meet them and bowed himself to the ground and said, Yahuwah, if I have found favor in your eyes, please do not pass your servant by. Please let a little water be brought and wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree. And let me bring a piece of bread and refresh your hearts and then go on. For this is why you have come to your servant. And they said, do as you have said. So Abram ran into the tent and to Sarah and said, hurry, make ready 3 measures of fine flour, knead it and make cakes. You know, how many of us wives would be a little ticked off? And our husband's like, oh, I know that I myself, especially after 7 years of being sick and not really socializing, well, not even being able to socialize for several of those years, I've very much lost the gift of hospitality. And it's something that I really feel led to work on getting back. So, but at this point in time, if my husband's like, hey, there's these people that showed up, go make some bread for them, I'm going to be, yeah, I don't know that I would do it with a kind, gentle, loving heart. So, but anyway, then Abraham ran to the herd and took a tender and good calf and gave it to a young man, and he hurried to prepare it. And you know, I've always, as I've read that, I'm like, you know, this isn't just take a matter of, you know, an hour or so. This is hours of work. You know, this is a couple hours for the bread, a couple hours to not only, you know, to kill and, you know, dress and then cook this calf. This is an all-day thing. So, and then he took curds and milk, and this is really interesting because this is something that I've been experimenting the past couple of weeks and had several failures and hope to have some more successes, but is making, I have raw milk and I've been making cheeses, and I went to make cottage cheese and I messed it up because you have to do it with clabber, but you make clabber with the milk, and I didn't read it right or it wasn't put out right in the recipe, but I just cooked all the clabber. So, but I've got more clabber started, and because I want to make cottage cheese and sour cream and cream cheese. And so I've been watching YouTube videos, and, you know, I tried to learn just from reading it from recipes, and yeah, I need visual. So hopefully this next batch I'll start making, you know, I've made some decent farmer's cheese and kefir yogurt. So, all right. Sorry, I got lost here. So, and he took curds and milk and the calf, which he had prepared, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree as they ate. And they said to him, where is Sarah, your wife? And he said, see, in the tent. And he said, I shall, and he, capital He, Yahuwah, said, I shall certainly return to you according to the time of life, and see, Sarah, your wife, is to have a son. And Sarah was listening in the tent door, which was behind him. And now Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age, and Sarah was past the way of woman. And Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I've grown old, shall I have pleasure, my master being too old? And Yahuwah said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I truly have a child since I am old? Is any matter too hard for Yahuwah? At the appointed time, I'm going to return to you according to the time of life, and Sarah is to have a son. The time of life, that must mean that's, you know, gestation period, the 9 months. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And she said, and he said, he, capital He, Yahuwah, no, but you did laugh. And the men rose up and from there looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to send them away. And Yahuwah said, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm going to do? Since Abraham is currently going to become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I have known him so that he commands his children and his household after him to guard the way of Yahuwah, to do righteousness and right ruling, so that Yahuwah brings to Abraham what he has spoken. I mean, what a privilege, because he is committed to following Torah, following instructions, following and doing it Yahuwah's way. He's blessed and given us information. And Yahuwah said, because the outcry against, where's my pencil? Because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very heavy, I'm going down to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it, that it has come to me, and if not, I know. So the men turned away from there and went towards Sodom, but Yahuwah stood still before Abraham, and Abraham drew near. Isn't that beautiful? He just so comfortable and bold. I mean, I guess he just did sit and have a meal with him. Wow. The things I'd love to do. Would you also destroy the righteous with the wrong? Suppose there are 50 righteous in the city. Would you also destroy the place and not spare it if there are 50 righteous that were in it? Far be it from you to act in this way, to slay the righteous with the wrong, so that the righteous should be as the wrong. Far be it from you. Does the judge of all the earth not do right? Wow, he's like super bold. He's like calling him out, questioning them. And Yahuwah said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I shall spare the place for their sakes. And Abraham answered and said, look, please, I who am but dust and ashes have taken it upon myself to speak to Yahuwah. Suppose there are 5 less than the 50 righteous. Would you destroy all the city for a lack of 5? And he said, if I find 45, I do not destroy it. And he spoke to him yet again. Now he's getting a little more humble, and said, suppose there's 45. And he said, so suppose there's found 40. And he said, I would not do it for the sake of 40. And he said, let not Yahuwah be displeased, and let me speak. Suppose there are found 30. And he said, I would not do it if I found 30 there. And he said, look, please, I have taken it upon myself just to speak to Yahuwah. Suppose there are found 20. And he said, I would not destroy it for the sake of 20. There's got to be a lot more significance in this countdown. Because, man, when there's numbers, I've learned when there is numbers, there's usually a deeper meaning. So, and he said, let not Yahuwah be displeased, and let me speak only this time. Suppose that there's found 10. And he said, I would not destroy it for the sake of 10. Then Yahuwah went away as soon as he had ended speaking to Abram, and Abraham returned to his place. 19. And the 2 messengers came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting at the gate of Sodom. And when Lot saw them, he arose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face towards the ground. And he said, look, please, my masters, please turn in to your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet and rise early and go your way. And they said, no, but let us spend the night in the open square. But he urged them strongly, and they turned into him and came into his house, and he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Before they lay down, the men of the city and the men of Sodom, or Sedom, both old and young, all the people from every part surrounded the house. This is just so bizarre to me. I mean, I can't even imagine. Sorry, let me get rid of that. Sorry, lost my spot. Okay. Before the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both old and young, all the people from every part surrounded the house. And they called to Lot and said to him, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us and let us know them. So Lot went out to them through the doorway and shut the door behind him and said, please, my brothers, do not do evil. Look, please, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. please let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you wish. Only that no deed to these men, because they have come under the shadow of my roof. But they said, stand back. And they said, this one came in to sojourn, and should he, so he, he's not one of us. And so should he always judge? That's an interesting comment that I've never noticed before. This one came in to sojourn, and should he always judge? So I wonder if like Lot was like, judging. Well, obviously he knew they were rotten and was against it. So now we are going to treat you worse than them. So they pressed hard against the man Lot and came near to break the door down the door. But the men reached out their hand, the angels that are inside, and pulled Lot into the house with them and shut the door. Then they struck the men who were at the doorway of the house with blindness, both small and great, and they wearied themselves to find the door. And the men said to Lot, have you anyone else here? A son-in-law and your sons and your daughters and whoever you have in the city, bring them out of this place. So, I'm wondering if here they're looking for the 10 that Yahuwah said that he would spare the city for. That just came to me as like, he couldn't find 10, found 4. So, for we are going to destroy this place because of the cry against them has grown great before the face of Yahuwah, and Yahuwah has sent us to destroy it. And Lot went out and spoke to his son-in-law, who had married his daughters, and said, get up, get out of this place, for Yahuwah is going to destroy this city. But to his son-in-law, he seemed to be one joking. So, it says that it was their fiancés in the commentary of the 2 daughters that were still in his home. But it just says one son-in-law married to his daughters. Yeah. So that'll have a big question mark there. That'll be something I'll have to look up and research. And when morning dawned, the messengers urged Lot to hurry, saying, get up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the punishment of the city. It just reminded me of the judgment that's coming to America because of its wicked ways. And while he loitered, the men took hold of his hand and his wife's hand and the hands of his 2 daughters, Yahuwah having compassion on him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. And it came to be, when they had brought him outside, that he said, escape for your life. Do not look behind you, nor stay anywhere in the plain. Escape to the mountains, and lest you be consumed. And Lot said to them, oh no, Yahuwah, look, please, your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have increased your loving commitment, which you have shown me by saving my life. But, see, Abraham, immediate obedience. Lot, got to argue, especially at a really bad time. I am unable to escape to the mountains, lest calamity overtake me and I die. Look, please, this city is near enough to flee to, and it is small. Please let me escape there. It is not a small matter, and lest my life be saved. And he said to them, look, I have favored you concerning this matter, also without overthrowing the city for which you have spoken. Hurry. So he's sparing this little city for Lot. Hurry, escape there, for I am not able to do any deed until you arrive there. So the name of the city was called Sor, T-S-O, then a little at the top, A-R. The sun had risen upon the earth when Lot entered Sisor. And Yahuwah rained sulfur and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from Yahuwah out of the heavens. And I've heard that they actually have found that this area is all dead and it's covered in sulfur to this day. So he overthrew those cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a post of salt. And Abraham arose early in the morning and went to the place where he had stood before Yahuwah. And he looked towards Sodom and Gomorrah and towards all the land of the plain. And he looked and he saw the smoke of the land, which went up like the smoke of a furnace. Thus it came to be, when Elohim destroyed the cities of the plain, that Elohim remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow. when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had dwelt. I wonder, because Abraham's faith was so great, I bet he knew that Yahuwah, if nothing else, saved his family down there, Lot and his family. So, and Lot went out to Seir and dwelt in the mountains. So here he's told to go to, and I know there's got to be more to this as well, because this just always puzzled me. He argues about going to the mountains where he's told. He wants to go to this little city. He goes to this little city and ends up leaving it and going to the mountains anyway. So, so he went with, dwelt in the mountains with his two daughters. His two daughters were with him, and he was afraid to dwell in Seir, and he and his two daughters dwelt in a cave. And the firstborn said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there is no man on the earth to come to us." Now, that doesn't make sense to me about that they thought that they were the only ones left on the planet, because they were in Seir, and the father spared Seir, the whole city, so they knew that there were other people alive before Lot went up to the mountain. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. More studying to figure out what the heck's going on there. But so our father is old, and there's no man on the earth to come into us as the way of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine and lay with him, so that we preserve the seed of our father. Where'd they get the wine? Oh, probably in Seir. So they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he was not aware of it when she lay down or when she arose. And it came to be on the next day that the firstborn said to the younger, "See, I have laid with the father, my father last night. Let us make him drink wine tonight as well, and you go in and lie with him, so that we keep the seed of our father." So they made their father drink wine that night as well, and the younger rose and lay with him, and he was not aware of it when she lay down and when she rose. Thus both daughters of Lot became pregnant by their father. The firstborn bore a son, called his name Moab, and he is the father of the Moabites to this day. And the younger, she also bore a son, and called his name Ben-Ami. He is the father of the children of Ammon to this day. So, and then it stops here, and I'm super curious. 9 months, they're pregnant. Dad's got to understand what they did. It just kind of drops the story at this point, and I've just got so many more questions. There might be more information in the book of Jubilees or Jasher. I'll have to look, because I'm super curious now. Anyway, 20. And Abraham set out from there to the land of the south, and sojourned between Kadesh and Shur, and stayed in Gerar. And Abraham said concerning Sarah his wife, "She is my sister." And Abimelech, sovereign of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But Elohim came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, "See, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife." However, Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, "Yahuwah, would you kill a righteous nation also? Did he not say to me, 'She is my sister'?" And she even herself said, "He is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and in the innocence of my hands, I have done this." And Elohim said to him in a dream, "Yes, I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart, and so I kept you from sinning against me. For this reason, I did not let you touch her. And now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and let him pray for you, and you live. But if you do not return her, know that you shall certainly die, you and all that is yours." So Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all the servants and spoke all these words in their hearing. And the men were greatly frightened. And Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us? And what have I sinned against you, that you have brought this on me and my reign, a great sin? You have done matters to me that should not be done." And Abimelech said to Abraham, "What did you have in view that you have done this matter?" And Abraham said, "Only because I said to myself, the fear of Elohim is not in this place, and they shall kill me for the sake of my wife. And yet she is truly my sister, and she's the daughter of my father," which is actually daughter of his grandfather, daughter of his brother, which in that culture, the older brother would, or the next brother would take, well, that's his daughter. No, never mind. Talking about the wives. If a man's to die, and his wife, the next brother would take that wife. But oh, I'm sorry, I got off track here. The fear of Elohim is not in this place, and they shall kill me for the sake of my wife. And yet she truly is my sister. She's the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And she became my wife. And it came to be, when Elohim caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said to her, this is your loving commitment that you should do for me in every place, wherever we go. Say to me, he is my brother. Then Abimelech took sheep and cattle and male and female servants and gave them to Abraham and returned Sarah, his wife, to him. The father, I don't understand it. And Abimelech said, see, my land is before you. Dwell wherever is good in your eyes. And Sarah said, and to Sarah he said, see, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. See, it is to you a covering of eyes before all who are with you, before all others. You are cleared before everyone. And Abraham prayed to Elohim, and Elohim healed Abimelech and his wife and his female servants. So they bore children. And Yahuwah had closed up all of the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, his wife. So there's that. So now we go to the Haftorah, the prophets, and it is 2 Kings 4:1 through 37. There. Okay. And a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, saying, your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared Yahuwah, and the lender has come to take my 2 sons to be his slaves. And Elisha said to her, what should I do for you? Inform me, what do you have in this house? And she said, your female servant has none at all in this house except for a pot of oil. And he said, go, borrow vessels from everywhere, and all of your neighbors empty vessels. Do not get a few. And when you have come in, you shall shut the door behind you and your sons, then pour it into all of those vessels and set aside filled ones. So she went from him and shut the door behind her and her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured it out. And it came to be, when the vessels were filled, that she said to her son, bring me another vessel. But he said, there is not another vessel. And the oil ceased. So she went and informed the man of Elohim, and he said, go, sell the oil and pay your debt, and you and your sons live on the rest. And it came to be, on the day that Elisha went to Shunem, there was a prominent woman, and she took hold of him to eat some food. And it came to be, as often as he passed by, that he would turn in there to get some food. And she said to her husband, look, I know that this is a set apart man of Elohim who passes by us continually. Please let us make a small upper room on the wall, and let us put a bed in there for him, and a table and a chair and a lampstand. And it shall be, whenever he comes to us, let him turn in there. And it came to be, on the day that he came there, that he turned into the upper room and lay down there. And he said to Gehazi, his servant, call this Shunammite woman. So he called her, and she stood before him. And he said to her, please say to her, look, you have gone to all this trouble for us. What is there to be done for you? Should I speak on the behalf to the sovereign or to the commander of the army? And she answered, I am dwelling among my own people. And he said, what then is to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, well, she has no son, and her husband is old. And he said, call her. So he called her, and she stood in the doorway. And he said, about this appointed time next year, you shall embrace a son. And she said, no, my master, man of Elohim, do not lie to your female servant. And the woman conceived and bore a son when the appointed time had come, of which Elisha had spoken to her. And the child grew, and it came to be, on a day that he went out to his father to the reapers, and said to his father, my head, my head. And he said to his servant, take him to his mother. Wait a second, I missed something. And the woman conceived, and the child grew, and it came to be, on the day that he went out to his father to the reapers, and he said, my head, my head. Okay, so yeah. take him to his mother. So he took him and brought him to his mother, and he sat on her knees till noon and died. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of Elohim and shut the door on him and went out. And she called to her husband and said, please send one of the young men and one of the donkeys. So they hurried to the man of Elohim and returned. So that I hurried to the man of Elohim and returned. And he said, why are you going to him today? It is neither a new moon nor a Sabbath. They celebrated the new moon and the Sabbath like we do. And she said, it is well. And she saddled the donkey, and she said to her servant, drive and go, and do not slow down, except I speak to you. And she went and came to the man of Elohim on Mount Carmel. And it came to be, when the man of Elohim saw her at the distance, he said to his servant Gehazi, see the Shunammite woman. Please run now and meet her and say to her, is it well with you? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with the child? And she answered, it is well. And she came to the man of Elohim at the hill, and she took hold of him by the feet. But Gehazi came near to push her away. But the man of Elohim said, leave her alone, for her being is bitter in her, and Yahuwah has hidden it from me and has not revealed it to me. There's so many parallels here. And she said, did I ask a son of my master? Did I not say, do not deceive me? And he said to Gehazi, gird up your loins and take my staff in your hand and go. And when you meet anyone, do not greet him. And when anyone greets you, do not answer him. And you shall lay my staff on the face of the child. And the mother of the child said, as Yahuwah lives and as your being lives, I do not leave you. And he rose and he followed her. And Gehazi went on ahead of them and laid the staff on the face of the child. But there was no voice and there was no hearing. So he went back to meet him and reported him, saying, the child is not awake. And Elisha came into the house and saw that the child was dead, laying on his bed. And he went in and he shut the door behind the two of them, and he prayed to Yahuwah. And he went up and he lay on the child and put his mouth on his mouth and his eyes on his eyes and his hands on his hands, and stretched himself out on the child, and the flesh of the child became warm. And he returned and he walked back and forth in the house, and then went up and stretched himself out on him again, out on him. And the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. There's got to be so much in all of this. Wow. And he called Gehazi and said, call the Shunammite woman. So he called her, and she came up to him, and he said, pick up your son. Then she went in and fell at his feet and bowed herself to the ground and picked up her son and went out. Oh. And the Gospels, Luke 2, 1 through 38. And it came to be in those days that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus for all of the world to be registered. This took place as a first registration while Quirinius was governing Syria. And all were going to be registered, each one to his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, to Yehuda, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house of the lineage of David, to be registered with Miriam, who was engaged to him, being pregnant. It's got to be scandalous in those days. And it came to be that while they were there, the days were filled for her to give birth. And she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him up and laid him down in a feeding trough, because there was no room for them in a lodging place. And in the same country, there were shepherds living out in the field, keeping watch over their flocks by night. And look, and this is, one of the proofs that Yeshua was not born in December, is that it was too cold for flocks to be out in the fields. And that's why they figure it's more like September that Yeshua was born, around Feast of Tabernacles or Feast of Trumpets, one of those feasts. And look, a messenger of Yahuwah stood before them, and the esteem of Yahuwah shone around them, and they were greatly afraid. And the messenger said to them, do not be afraid, for look, I bring to you good news of great joy, which shall be to all people, because there was born to you today in the city of David a Savior, who is Messiah, the Master. And this is the sign to you: you shall find a baby wrapped up, lying in a feeding trough. And suddenly there was with the messenger a crowd of the heavenly hosts, praising Elohim and saying, esteemed Elohim in the highest, and on earth peace among men with whom he is pleased. And it came to be, when the messenger had gone away from them into the heaven, that the shepherds said to each other, indeed, let us go to Bethlehem and see this matter that has taken place, which the master has made known to us. And they came in haste and found Miriam and Joseph and the baby lying in the feeding trough. And having seen them, made known the matter which had spoken to them concerning the child. And all those that heard marveled at what the shepherds had said to them. But Miriam kept all of these matters, considering them in her heart. And the shepherds returned, boasting and praising Elohim for all that they had heard and seen as it was spoken to them. Oh, 38. So it keeps going. And when 8 days were completed for him to be circumcised, his name was called Yahusha, the name given by the messenger before he was conceived in the womb. And when the days of her cleansing according to the Torah, so what, with a male child, is it 40 days? I think it's 40 days. According to the Torah of Moshe, were completed. So here, Mary kept Torah. And they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to Yahuwah. Yeah, I think if anyone listening knows it, who listens to this, knows the answer, I think, and I'll put a big question mark there. I think it's 40 days for males, 80 days for females, but I'm not sure. But when the days of her cleansing, according to the Torah of Moshe, were completed, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to Yahuwah. As it has been written in the Torah of Yahuwah, every male who opens the womb shall be called set apart to Yahuwah. So every firstborn male is consecrated to Yahuwah. And to give an offering according to what is said in the Torah. So a pair of turtle doves or 2 pigeons. And this will, as we're reading the Torah, there's different things they can offer. The fact that they were giving turtle doves or pigeons, I've heard that it means that they were not wealthy. They were so. And see, there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Shimon, and this man was righteous and dedicated, looking for the comforting. So he was actively waiting and watching and looking at the signs, kind of like we're doing now, of the things are coming to pass. And he was waiting for the Messiah. And he was dedicated. I love that, dedicated. Let's be dedicated to looking for the comforting of Israel. And the set apart spirit was upon him. And it had been revealed to him by the set apart spirit that he would not see death before he sees the Messiah of Yahuwah. What a blessing. And he came in the spirit into the set apart place. And as the parents brought in the child Yeshua to do for him according to the usual practice of the Torah, then he took him up in his arms and blessed Elohim and said, now let your servant go in peace, O master, according to your word, for my eyes have seen your deliverance, which you have prepared before the face of all the peoples, a light for the unveiling of the nations. Ooh, of the nations. And the esteem of your people, Israel. And Joseph and his mother were marveling at what was said about him. And Shimon blessed them and said to Miriam, his mother, see, this one is set for a fall and rising of many in Israel, and for a sign spoken against. And a sword shall pierce through your own being also, so as to reveal the thoughts of many hearts. Big question mark there. And there was Hannah, a prophetess, a daughter of Peniel, of the tribe of Asher. She was advanced in years and had lived with a husband 7 years from her maidenhood. And she was a widow of about 84 years, who did not leave the set apart place, but served Elohim with fastings and prayers day and night. And she, coming in at that moment, gave thanks to Yahuwah and spoke of him to all who were waiting for redemption in Jerusalem. So I just love his word and how everything is so intertwined and meshed together. So, well, thank you for your time. For those of you that watched everything here, let me know what you thought. I'd sure love to hear from people on these. I mean, I don't do this for likes or for algorithms I do this out of obedience. The Father told me to read the Torah portions and record them on YouTube, and that's what I'm doing. But I'd sure love to hear from anyone who got this far to the end here. Just what your thoughts are about what we've read today, what the Father's revealed to you. If you're interested in joining our women's Bible study, we have grown exponentially. It's just crazy and it's beautiful. I love seeing what the Father's done. And it's just, we're all so scattered. We're all so scattered. So it's really beautiful having fellowship. Even though it's online and virtual, it's beautiful having fellowship because we all crave and require that. So be blessed. Feast on his word every day. See you next week. Bye.